Hey guys, Marsingin here, bringing you Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle video, and so today we are going to talk about a couple of units that should be EZAing soon, at least during this year, in the next few months, hopefully, that will be helpful in the Festival of Battles event. Over the weekend, while I was doing my World Tournament event, we had a lot of people attempting to get their first wins in the chat who weren't playing the World Tournament. A couple of people in the Discord all sharing their screens in the chill chat area and trying to help each other out, which was awesome. So make sure you guys do join the Discord, be a part of the community. If you need help with anything like team building or being able to beat the Festival battles for the first time, there's usually always people around that will be happy to help. And yeah, just like yesterday, people sharing their screens, like helping each other, giving advice and stuff like that, which was definitely very cool. And it was a fun little sort of side thing that we had going on while doing the World Tournament grind across the weekend. So I thought for this video, we'd talk about some of the upcoming EZAs that are going to be helpful in this event. Obviously, we've seen with characters like the new Kid Goku and the LR Bardock that as we get these new, more powerful stacking units, they are going to be very helpful in the event. And will help you get to the point of victory. Now, obviously, you do have to think about the fact that you can't just stack defense, because once you get near to the end of the event, the enemies start having quite a lot of HP, as well as, of course, the dreaded turn counter restriction, right, with the phases. I think the most I've seen from people like actually losing in the last few phases is down to not being able to kill the bosses in time, especially the Daima, Goku and Glorio phase, as opposed to actually being killed. So you've got to remember that offense and defense are both very important. It is an event that requires a lot of stuff going on, a lot of planning, and unfortunately you can sometimes realize late into the run that you have made a mistake early on with how you prioritize different kinds of stacking with some of your units, and it can be an absolute nightmare. So any characters that will make it that little bit easier are definitely going to be helpful. So there's a couple in particular that I wanted to talk about. Now, obviously, one thing to bear in mind is that any of these characters on here, some of the examples being like Int Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, the AGL Pycon Tech Janemba, any of these characters, right, any of them really on the list, Tapion and Minosha, the Tech Androids, AGL Trunks, any of these characters with their EZA, they could make them a stacking unit when they're not already. And obviously then they would be very beneficial for the event, but we have no way to know whether they are going to do that or not, right? So we're mainly just going to highlight some of the units who are stackers already and who fit onto some of these teams that people are currently running to beat the event. So if we switch over to the wiki view here, the first one that is definitely, he's the one that's like most upcoming, the oldest of the 2020 units that does not yet have an EZA, is the Physical Angel Frieza from the Tournament of Power. Now, this guy doesn't necessarily fit the full criteria because, as I mentioned at the beginning, right, offense is probably just as important as defense, and this guy only stacks defense in his base form. He has a medium chance to dodge after he receives the first attack, but realistically in this event that's not going to matter too much once you get him stacked up to the point where he's not really taking damage anyway. But of course this is him pre-EZA, so it would be nice if they added in the attack stacking in base as well, if they really did want to make him a unit that would be perfect for this event, because I feel like if they don't add attack stacking, then he probably isn't going to be as useful. Because remember, this guy, he can be transformed into Golden Frieza straight away. But when you transform into Golden Frieza, he massively raises attack for one turn, and then that's it, right? So I'm assuming post-EZA, he's probably going to massively raise attack and defense for one turn. But because he won't be stacking when he's in the Golden Frieza form, you're going to want to keep him in this form like as long as possible, get that defense stacked up really high, and then transform him into Angel Golden Frieza, probably literally just in the later phases when you get to that point that you need the extra damage. However, as I say, if they don't add any sort of attack stacking into him, because they could, even if it's just in his passive, building up attack by attacking a certain number of times, if he doesn't get any kind of attack stacking in his passive, just having the massively raise attack is not going to be useful enough, right? So he could be a unit that will be providing a decent amount of defense and be able to tank, And obviously these characters that can survive, especially against like Tech Vegeta, who's doing 3 supers in one turn that do 24 million damage, having characters that are able to eat his attacks is obviously very helpful. But you do need to be able to do damage as well. So unless this guy gets any form of attack stacking or attack build up in his base, he potentially won't be one of the best units to use. But he is as a Frieza on Successors and Gifted Warriors, so he's on the full 220 lead for the Agl Vegeta, aka Gogeta, who is of course one of the best units for the event. So he definitely has potential, but we have to see what they do with his EZA, especially when it comes to attack. Another character who is in a similar boat is this Agl Gohan from the Garlic Jr. saga. He also is an infinite defensive stacker, but obviously he does not have any sort of attack stacking. He has a unit super if you have a Piccolo or a Krillin on the team, which is unlikely given the current options for the build of Festival of Battles. But even then, he only greatly raises attack for 1 turn with the unit super. So this is another character who ideally would need to have raises attack as well as defense. However, he could be a little bit more useful for the team than the Frieza, because even if he only remains a defensive stacker, he is a unit that is providing 3 key and 58% defense to all allies. And that's pre-EZA, right? So if this goes up to including attack as well, then obviously he's buffing everybody else on the turn, which is going to be very helpful. He gets a lot of extra stats when attacking as well. He gets extra stats if there's a Heavenly Events ally in the same turn, which isn't super relevant. But he also has the active skill, which gives you a 30% heal, guards for the turn, and then raises all allies' defense by 20% for 2 turns. So that could be very, very helpful. The buffing all allies for 2 turns, again, when you're getting to those final 2 phases against Gogeta and Vegito, and they're able to hit as hard as they do, this ability would be very, very useful for buffing everybody else on the turn. The guard at that point, I guess, isn't really super important, but then I suppose even if you've stacked up to like 20 million defense, he's still got type disadvantage to the Vegito in the final phase. So the ability to give himself guard is obviously going to be very, very good. So this guy, he could be useful for the team. Again, ideally he needs to get attack stacking on top of the defense stacking, and then he absolutely would be a go-to unit. He is an earth protecting hero as well as obviously an earthbred fighter, so he's on the full 220 lead for the Tech Vegito, who is kind of the main unit that is just straight out the best for this event, right, with the ability to go crazy with the active skill and all the counters towards the end. And this guy being on his 220 lead is obviously very, very good. Now, a character who doesn't need to worry too much about the EZA changing their form of stacking is this Tech, Kale and Caulifla. They are already a unit that stacks attack and defense. So obviously something that would be great for them, of course, is if their EZA made them greatly raise attack and defense. But even if it doesn't, any forms of like additionals would be helpful. They currently have an additional attack that has a medium chance to become a super, and that's all. But any form of like maybe upping the chance for that one and giving them a separate one, maybe with a different condition, would be quite useful. Otherwise, they definitely would ideally want to have greatly raises instead of a normal raise. But these guys are stacking attack and defense. Outside of that, they don't really have anything crazy going on in their passive. They get extra attack and defense with each attack performed, 6% up to 60. So obviously this could be buffed a little bit, which kind of helps on top of the stacking for them to hit bigger numbers. And they get a bit of extra attack if there's a Universe Survival Saga enemy, which there is for a few of the phases. So them doing a little bit of extra attack there is going to be somewhat helpful. And then, of course, they can fuse into Super Saiyan 2 Kefla. Once they fuse, they stop stacking defense, but they continue to stack attack. So this could be something we could see where if this stays raise attack and defense, this could be greatly raise attack once you transform. This would be something that would be useful because Kefla has built-in chance to dodge, right? It's currently high chance before her EZA. So this would be a unit where you could stack them up to a certain level of defense, then decide to fuse, and then whilst your defense won't get any higher for the Kefla, she will still be stacking attack. So by the time you get to the end, she's going to be able to do solid damage. She has a built-in additional chance, which is only medium chance. Obviously, ideally that would go up. The high chance of dodging, 50% is obviously decent, but if that was to go up as well, that would be very good, especially for supers in the later phases. And then she does get some extra stats on attack, as well as the extra 60% with 6 or more key spheres obtained. They could easily do a thing with lowering those key spheres required, maybe giving her like a guaranteed extra super if you get 6 orbs, right? If you're getting the attack buff for maybe say 3 orbs, potentially give her guard with a condition as well would be kind of crazy. But yeah, these guys with their ability to stack attack and defense, they would be very, very good in this event. They are Saiyans, so they have the sort of typical Saiyan links, even though they have some of these like Universe 6 links and stuff, right? Like they have prepared for battle, so they're not going to struggle for ki. And of course, they are pure Saiyan characters who are also on Potara, so they would be getting the full 220% leader skill from the Tech Vegito as well. So these guys will be a very, very good stacking unit for the festival event, and we don't need to worry like with the Frieza or the Gohan whether or not they are going to end up being able to stack attack, because they already do that, right? So if this does change to greatly raise, that would be incredible for this event. If it stays raise attack and defense, that would be fine. The Kefla I could see changing to like greatly raise. If they added the defense stacking to Kefla as well, that would obviously be really good, because you could transform her as early as you want at that point. But I figure they'd probably keep it separate, so that you are stacking defense until you decide to fuse, and then you're still able to stack attack. But these guys definitely could be very, very good. And then an interesting unit, the last one I wanted to talk about here, that should be really, really good for the event on their own, but it's kind of interesting in terms of teams for them, is the Int Vegeta and Trunks. Because these guys are the next Tanabata LR in line to get an EZA. I know a lot of people want to see the EZA for Int Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku, but these guys were the Tanabata unit the year before him, so they would be the one next in line to get an EZA. And these guys are infinitely stacking attack and defense on their 18 key super, and then they just have raise for 1 turn on their 12 key super. So it's kind of a similar thing with like the AGL Bardock, where you'd want to keep them on rotation because their 18 key super is the only way they stack defense. But of course, they are a unit that are kind of designed to be in slot 1. So keeping them on rotation is not exactly the end of the world. And remember, these guys, when they released as the Tanabata unit in 2022, they were pretty much widely agreed upon as the best unit in the game, like when they released. And they stayed a very dominant unit in the meta for a very long time. The problem with a lot of these units that are in a similar situation to them is a character who is essentially designed to kind of be only used in slot 1. Those are the units that then age out when the content becomes more difficult, because they're at their best in slot 1, but if they can't tank the new hardest hitting bosses in slot 1, then obviously they're weaker defensively when they're not in slot 1, so they're going to be even worse depending on the situation. Now with these guys being an infinite stacker, obviously they're able to build up to a pretty decent amount as long as you can get those 18 key supers in. They build up ki as well as they receive attacks, so it's not super difficult to get their 18 key super. And their entrance animation only requires a bond of parent and child ally, which of course characters like the Vegito and Gogeta, because they start off as the reversible exchange Goku and Vegeta, they're obviously on those categories, so their entrance animation is not going to be difficult to get at all. And then of course they have the active skill, massively raises attack temporarily, it does ultimate damage to the enemy, all attacks become crits and raise allies defense by 20%. Because they are infinitely stacking attack as well on their 18 key super, this means that by the time you get to the end of the event, especially if we're talking about using this against either Gogeta or Vegito, the active skill is going to be able to do a considerable amount of damage whilst also giving the rest of the allies on the rotation and themselves an extra 20% defense, which will help get through those final phases, especially in that last push. I've seen a couple of the runs where we were talking about people playing it yesterday, a couple of the runs where if you get really unlucky with the super attack spread for Vegito, because he can super 3 times, like if he's supering once in every slot, you might be in a situation where you just don't have like all 3 units on the rotation can't tank one of his supers, and then you're relying on either like a clutch dodge or potentially some of these abilities where these characters are buffing their allies' defense to be able to just push them to that limit they need to get to in order to be able to tank those attacks from Vegito. So these guys are going to be really, really good. Obviously they have type advantage against Vegito at the end anyway, despite the fact that they can have guard in certain slots. So That allows them to take a lot less damage from him. So these characters, like with their EZA, they will easily be a unit that by the time you get to Vegito at the end, they can quite happily sit in slot 1, even if he is going to be super attacking, right? So very much looking forward to seeing what these guys' EZA is going to bring. Like imagine if they make their 18 key super greatly raise attack and defense, and then their 12 key is just normal raise attack and defense. These guys could end up like not just being one of the best units in the game again, but one of the straight up best units for this new event. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If we go back to this list here, these are all the units still awaiting EZAs. Like I say, we've got a lot of these characters. They could give them attack stacking or attack and defense stacking, but characters like the Tech Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, Tech LR Super 17, like these guys don't have stacking at the moment. So obviously it's easy enough to just say, well, if they give them stacking, they'll be good in this event. But obviously in that case, we'd have to just go through every single one of these units and essentially say the same thing. But some of these guys definitely could get stacking. It's not something that they just always throw out for EZAs, but something that could be very useful. Like the tech androids, with their orb changing, they have that nuking style passive, and then they have that active skill to like ghost usher the enemy. If they became an infinite stacker with their EZA, they would be really, really good, because you could stack them up throughout the event, and then when you get to that like first Vegito turn, he's got the triple supers, you could use the ghost usher. I guess the only downside is a lot of the time you want to use that Vegito fusion active skill and get tons of counters, so you can't use that on the same turn as like a ghost usher ability, but still could be very helpful for helping you get to that point where you're then able to close out with the crazy Vegito turn. And then we get into, when we look at the 2022 characters, I think Ginyu stacks, so he has the potential, but obviously he's a 2022 unit, so we're probably a little bit further away from his EZA than we are for some of these other characters. Characters like Martian Vegeta, Raditz, the Golden Week, Goku Gohan and Cell, like these guys, any of these guys becoming stackers would be insanely good for this event. The ROF Blues, considering how terrible on release they were, could be very interesting if they got a good EZA. So some of these characters will be good, but it kind of comes down to, at the moment, if characters don't stack, they're just not going to be good enough for this event, right? Because as you get near to the end, you got like the Daima, Goku and Glorio doing like 5 million damage normals. So a lot of characters, unless they're stacking, are not even going to be able to tank their normals, let alone their like 17.5 million damage super attacks. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Are there any units that I missed out? Obviously this is the Dokkan Fest and LRs, so if there's any like banner units or like sub EZAs of stackers that could potentially be on the horizon that you guys think would be good for this event, do let me know down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Master Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.